A pilot's logbook. How do you fill it out? Hi, my name's Adam. I'm a newly qualified private pilot, and this channel is all about taking all my journeys getting my private pilot's license. Today we'll be looking at how to fill in your pilot's logbook. You'll need to learn to do this from the minute you start flying. From your first trial lesson, you will fill out a flight for that. That will count towards your hours. Just a bit of background around how many hours you need to get your license. The minimum amount of hours you need are 45 hours. This is combined dual and solo. Out of the 45, 10 hours need to be solo. And you need to have completed a flight which is 150 nautical miles in distance total, landing at 2 different aerodromes to where you started. That is known as the cross-country solo navigation. From around 10 hours roughly, you will do your first solo, and that's when you can start building up your solo hours. For me, from my first solo, I did a couple more solo hours just doing circuits to get used to flying on my own, landing the plane on my own, and that just comes with practice, which is what that's all about. Then you do some more dual hours and it comes to more navigational side of things. So once you're comfortable with navigating, and if you've been watching the videos, that's sort of where we're up to at the minute. But from there you'll be doing more solo hours, doing navigation on your own. And that's how you build up your hours. So I wouldn't be worried about trying to get solo hours if you are worried, because it will come naturally. Your instructor should be able to keep a good record of what you're doing as well. So he or she will know when you need to do certain aspects to build up specific parts of your flight hours. This logbook is the source of truth for all of your flying credibility, so you need to make sure you keep it safe. Take photocopies of it when you can to keep safe, because if you lose it or it gets damaged, that's it, it's gone. I also like to keep a digital copy of my logbook in a spreadsheet, so every time I have a flight, I update the spreadsheet just to match the records, but I also take photocopies and upload those to my computer so they're safe. Depending on how your instructor does it, they may note down the time for you, or they may get you to get used to noting down the time. My instructor mainly did all the timekeeping, which in a way made it a little bit more difficult for me to remember to do it when I started flying on my own. But the planes that we flew had data tracking, so they knew when they were turned on, when they started moving, and when they were at a speed which was enough to be seen as flight. So that's how you get the takeoff time. Generally, it's a good idea to note down these times before you turn the engine on, before you move, and then when you take off. Same as when you land, when you stop, and when you turn the engine off. These are all useful times to know for the aeroplane's maintenance. When you start flying on your own, you'll need to fill out a logbook for the plane itself as well. And that's why those times are useful. And if you join a syndicate or a group where you share the plane, the amount that you pay for the flight is generally calculated from those times. It depends on how your group works, but for example, the one that I'm in works from the engine time. So from the time that you turn the engine on to the time that you turn the engine off. But then we record the flight time differently in the logbook. So it would be from takeoff to landing that would get recorded in the plane's logbook, whereas the flight time that we record in our personal logbook is from off blocks, so when you start moving, to on blocks. So there's all different kinds of times that you need to keep track of, so it's good to get into a habit of it early on. So let's take a look. This is mine. It's got the WLAC logo on it, which was White Waltham, West London Aero Club. That's where I did all my training and learned to fly. Yours could be different, but they generally all have the same layout. So there's my address. We're not going to go into that. Just some instructions for you. So down here, there is an example of how to fill it out. So if you're not sure, you can follow that, but we'll continue through just so you've got a visual representation of how to do it from me here. Here you have a list of your licenses. I haven't filled mine out there, I need to do that. Previous flying experience. You shouldn't need to touch this if you're just starting out learning. I didn't need to because I didn't have any previous flying experience, but if you had any, you would fill that out here. So this is where any of your renewals of ratings or differences training would go. Again, shouldn't need to worry too much about that. Some handling notes. Certificate of qualification as a pilot in command. This should be filled out by someone that is certified to do so. Again, mine's not been filled out. I'm not sure why. Probably I need to get that filled out. On the aircraft flown page, you can keep a list of all the aircraft that you've flown. A lot of these here are the club aircraft that I flew whilst training. All of them up to here. Up to here as well, actually. But this one was a cub, which I accidentally booked, so we ended up going up in a cub doing some tail wheel. That was fun. Aerodromes you visited. I've not done many. I need to do more. I'm looking forward to doing that. Just write down the ICAO code, or ICAO code. I can't say it properly. Some people say it like that. More aerodromes visited, any simulated training that you can do. I believe it's 5 hours you can do simulated training, which will count towards your total hours as well. I'm not sure where you can do that. I didn't look that up, but that could be a cheaper way of getting some more hours in. Okay, and now we're on to the flight logs. So obviously the date you write here, type. In my case, a lot of the time it was a PA28161. This may vary depending on the plane that you fly. You'll have to get the information from your instructor, or you hopefully should know that. The registration of the plane, that can go here. Fairly straightforward as well. Just look at the back of the tail of the plane and you'll see the tail number. Captain. In the event that you are flying under training, this will be your instructor. And in the operator's capacity, PUT stands for pilot under training. And that will be the same for any dual instruction that you have. I'll move on to what you write if you are the captain shortly. The journey or the nature of the flight. So this is just where you went from and where you arrived at. If you're departing and arriving at the same aerodrome, you just write the same ICAO code. And then the time in the logbook is the time that you start moving the aeroplane under its own power. So essentially off blocks time, as I mentioned earlier. And the arrival is the same, but when you stop. So when the airplane stops moving under its own power. That's the official definition for it. On the right hand side of the page, you should only, in your training, unless you're training for a multi-engine, but generally you'll be starting at a single engine. In the first column here, this is for when you are in command, when you're flying solo, or once you've passed and got your license, you will still be, even if you have passengers, you will be writing your time in here. The dual is what you will do when you are training. So you can see this whole column here has been filled out with the times because I've been under training. So yeah, as I said, if you're doing multi-engine, it's the same here. If you're doing any night time, then they would go down here. You can do a night rating, which is 5 hours, I believe. 5 hours worth of training. And you can do that as part of your total 45 hours. So if you did any night training, any night flights, they would go down here. Similarly, if you did any instrument flying, they would go here, or simulated instrument flying. This could be classed as when you're using the hood. So as part of the training, you need to do some flight which has simulated you going into cloud. So you get a plastic visor which goes over your head, and it blocks out your vision from... It blocks out your VFR vision, basically. When this happens, you can see the instruments, and your instructor will advise you on where to fly and try and keep wings level and do some basic rate 1 turns, for example. But yes, so that should go down in here. Any remarks go here. Generally, my instructor just asked me to write down the exercise that we did out of the syllabus so he can look back at this to see what we've done and when. But as you get to a point where you're flying on your own, I just write down sort of where I went, what I did maybe. So this one, for example, was just me practicing some circuits. I did a glide. This one I flew around the Isle of Wight and did a Class D Solent crossing. So just remarks to help you remember what you did on that flight, for example. I didn't do any totals until it came to me actually applying for my license, just so the head instructor could work out how much I had, but he asked me to leave that until the end, so he did all of that. So if we look at this row here, let's see the difference here and here. So the captain is me, self. This was my first solo that I did. It was only a 0.2, which is calculated, I should have mentioned this earlier, the decimal number of the flight time is calculated as a percentage of an hour. So it doesn't have to be extremely accurate, so just round it to the closest tenth. Back over here, so under the operating capacity, P1 means that you are the captain, so we write P1 there. Everything else is the same, apart from the fact that we've written our time in the in command. Feel free to write any other remarks as well, like if you don't have space here, just somewhere that you're not going to use it. For example, I wasn't at this point in my training going to be using multi-engine, so I just am reminding myself that that was a nav there. Here is the instrument flying, simulated instrument flying. That's when I was using the visor that I just explained. If you make any mistakes, either correct it with some Tipex or, for example, like I've done here, just cross it out and put the correct information in. Try not to make mistakes though, because it does look messy and is difficult to fix. And then here's another difference with the operating capacity, P1S. This was my skills test. So if you're familiar with the driving test, skills test is similar to a driving test. They are testing your ability to perform certain maneuvers, to following navigational practices well. You get given a route which you need to follow using just your chart and dead reckoning pretty much. So you will be assessed on that, and then you do certain things like stalls, but maybe I'll do another video on your skills test. If we go back to when I did my first solo, so take this as an example. Here I did a flight duel with my instructor. So I didn't turn up on the day for my first solo and get in the plane and fly my own straight away. Generally what happens is you'll do a proficiency flight to get yourself used to flying again, because if you haven't flown in a while, it's not good if you just get straight in on your own as a student. So you'll do a flight with your instructor before you do any solo. If you are doing solo, you're generally going to have 2 flights, so you need to write in both flights. So the first one was under training, the second one was in command. As small as it is, write it in, because it all counts towards your end goal. I hope this has been an informative video for you, and I hope that you learn how to fill out your logbook properly. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. If you are enjoying my content, please subscribe, like the video. And I will continue to create videos that you've asked for. This was a requested video in the comments, so if there's anything that you would like to know, please do leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.